drinking dark whiskey, telling white lies. One leads to another on a Saturday night. Don't you cross your heart unless you hope to die. Drinking dark whiskey, telling white lies. Little white lie don't mean anyone no good when it's making around all over the neighborhood. Next thing you know, you're all misunderstood. Drinking dark whiskey, telling white lies. One leads to another on a Saturday night. Don't you cross your heart unless you hope to die. Drinking dark whiskey, telling white lies. Drinking dark whiskey, telling white lies. My roots are deeper than the bones of the others. My colors, they change with the sun. My branches were higher than anything on the hillside on the day that I watched them all come. Some were the color of the sky in the winter, and some were as blue as the night. They came like a storm with the light of the morning, and they fell through the whole day and night. The colors flew high and they danced in the sky as I watched them come over the hill. Then to my wonder, sticks that made thunder, such a great number lay still. When the light came again, there was death on the wind as the buzzards made way for the worms. And the little white trees that don't bend in the breeze are the ones that will never return. The colors flew high and they danced in the sky as I watched them come over the hill. Then to my wonder, sticks that made thunder, such a great number lay still. Those that have fallen, they come when I call them and answer the best that they can. But all they can see is what they used to be, and that's all they understand. The colors flew high and they danced in the sky as I watched them come over the hill. Then to my wonder, sticks that made thunder, such a great number lay still. The colors flew high and they danced in
We're ready? Okay. Hi. Hi, everybody. I'm Dana Caulfield, one of the founding editors of the Colorado Sun, and I'm very happy to invite you to this 8th Congressional District Democratic Primary Candidate Forum here in Greeley, generously sponsored by the Colorado Health Foundation. It's very important for us to be present in this community right now, particularly considering the importance of this particular congressional race, and to have a candidate forum sponsored in the second population center of the district is significant for us. So I'm pretty excited to introduce my colleagues, Jesse Paul and Taylor Dolvin, who will be moderating tonight.
And we'll welcome out the candidates as well. Thank you. All right, well, welcome to the first of 3 Colorado Sun primary forums this election year. Today's event is a face-off between the 2 Democrats running to represent Colorado's 8th congressional district next year. The winner of the primary on June 30th will face Republican U.S. Rep. Gabe Evans in November. I'm Jesse Paul, political reporter and editor at the Colorado Sun, and I'm joined by fellow political reporter Taylor Dolvin to my left. The 2 candidates joining us today are former State Representative Shannon Byrd of Westminster and State Representative Manny Rootnell of Commerce City. We were supposed to be joined today by Democrat Evan Munsing, a Marine veteran, but as you may have heard, he ended his campaign on Tuesday, so he is no longer with us to this debate. All right, so let's go over the rules for the debate. Each candidate will get 2 minutes for an introduction, then 90 seconds, a minute and a half to answer questions. Candidates will get 30-second rebuttals or add-ons at our discretion. They'll have 30 seconds to ask each other a question at one point during the debate. We'll also have a lightning round, yes or no, with candidates getting a minute at the end of that section to expand on their answers if they want, and then 1 minute closing. So we have this scheduled for 90 minutes. The candidates have not received any of our questions in advance, and thank you for cheering at the beginning, but I'd ask that you not do so any further during the debate. Please hold your applause until the end so we can make sure that we get through the debate and get as many questions as we can. Anyone who interrupts the debate will be asked to leave. So let's begin with opening statements per random draw. Representative Byrd will be going first. You'll have 2 minutes, and in turn, you'll go last on closing remarks.
Excellent. Well, first, thank you so much to the Colorado Sun and to the University of Northern Colorado for hosting this debate this evening. I'm Shannon Byrd. I was raised by my single mother and my grandmother. I grew up in a trailer park. My grandmother shared her tip money with our family to help us keep a roof over our heads, and that tip money also helped me become the first person in my family to go to college. I got my start in public service by volunteering in my kids' classrooms. And that's when I fell in love with serving my community. I had the opportunity to run for the state legislature, and during that time, I worked hard and was able to pass the bill and write the budget to fully fund Colorado's public schools for the first time in 15 years. I stood up to big health insurance companies to cut red tape and expand access to health care and bring costs down. I also championed a multi-year effort to make sure that Colorado would be a more affordable place to live by expanding construction of affordable housing and building condominiums again. And now, I'm running for Congress because every day, Gabe Evans and Donald Trump are making it harder for families like the one I grew up in to have a fair shot at success. Every day, we see Gabe Evans casting votes that show he answers to the president, not to the people of this district. He voted to rip away health care from tens of thousands of people in our state. He has been a cheerleader and a supporter of Donald Trump's war in the Middle East and the imposition of tariffs, which have caused costs to go through the roof for all of us. That needs to stop. This district deserves a fighter, somebody who knows how to get things done who answers to you and not the president. I'm thrilled to be here today to share my thoughts, and again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Byrd. Representative Rootnell.
First off, I want to thank all of y'all for being here. UNC, Colorado Sun, Univision, Thank you for participating in our democracy, especially in this moment. We need leaders who will stand up to Donald Trump. Let's just sit with that. Right now, Donald Trump and Gabe Evans are destroying our democracy, and they're sending masked ICE agents to terrorize communities like ours. For me, this fight is personal. I'm the son of a single immigrant mom who came to America in search of that American dream. We worked hard every single day for this country, but we still struggled. I remember being 10 years old the first time I filled out Medicaid and food stamp forms. The same programs that Donald Trump and Gabe Evans are destroying to give tax breaks to their billionaire donors. It was because of those programs, and because I worked at McDonald's and I sold my blood at a plasma center over 100 times to the point where I've got a scar on my arm. It was because of that I was able to make my way into college. And then I became an economist with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, where I swore an oath to defend our Constitution against enemies, both foreign and domestic. And then I became a legislator where I co-sponsored over 400 laws to lower costs, including in housing and healthcare, and stop Donald Trump's corrupt practices, his invasion into our schools and hospitals with his masked ICE agents. And unfortunately, there was only one Democrat that voted with Republicans to allow police to cooperate with ICE and allow ICE to raid our schools and hospitals, and that was Shannon Byrd. And I can't tell you how much that hurt me and my family. We need real leadership in Congress to stand up to this administration and fight for working families. That's what I've always done, and that's what I'll do in Congress.
Excuse me.
He did mention you, so I'll give you 30 seconds to respond.
Thank you very much. I absolutely did not vote to allow ICE into our public schools or into our hospitals. The vote that my opponent is mischaracterizing this evening was a committee vote taken to make a bill better, because that's our job as state legislators. That bill would have fined ordinary people, frontline workers, personally fines of $50,000 when their boss broke the law. I didn't think that was right. And my opponent, Manny, knew that. He knows that that is a problem with the bill, because just this last legislative session, he voted for another bill to actually fix that problem.
We will get to immigration later on, but we'll jump into the questions now.
Okay, Representative, first question is for you. So voters in the 8th Congressional District have consistently said the cost of living is a top issue for them. What are 3 things you would do in Congress to drive down costs for people living in the 8th District?
Thank you. The first thing, costs, we are hearing this everywhere. Since I have been in this campaign, I've made over 170 stops throughout this district. And without a doubt, people are concerned about the cost of their utility bills, the cost of their groceries, everyday items. And in Congress, we can take important action to rein those costs in, notably stopping Donald Trump's tariffs. To the extent any tariffs remain, we need legislative action to repeal those tariffs and start bringing costs down immediately. I want everyone to know that a tariff is a tax, and in our federal government, the only part of government that can levy a tax is Congress, and we need to take that power back. Next, the war in Iran needs to stop. Since that war began, our gas prices have increased by over 52% per gallon. That's outrageous. So many people are struggling with now higher gas prices. That means less food they can put on the table for their families. Donald Trump and his administration, backed up by Gabe Evans, have also voted to cut tax credits and grant programs that we used here in Colorado to scale up renewable energy. And we know that is the most cost-effective source of energy. Those grants need to be restored, and so do those tax credits, so we can bring down people's utility bills. And that's the work I intend to do in Congress.
Representative Rutenau, same question for you.
Yeah, the issue of affordability is deeply personal for me, like I know it is for so many of you. Like I said, I'm the son of a single mom, and we grew up on Medicaid and food stamps. And right now, Donald Trump has gutted those programs to the tune of $1 trillion to give tax breaks to his billionaire buddies. We need to roll that back and bring those healthcare savings back to our constituents. Also, every single time we're driving on the road, we're seeing how gas prices go up and up and up. And now it's 50% more than when the Iran war started. Donald Trump is sending us into these forever wars without any plans, putting American lives at risk and raising gas prices and prices across the board for working families like mine. We also need to be dealing with the housing crisis. I'm one of a few renters in the Colorado General Assembly. I've seen my rent go up 15% year over year. We need to make sure that we are streamlining building for homeowners so that they can build that accessible dwelling unit, and make sure that we build more affordable units for so many of us that want to be able to live closer to our families or live closer to work. I'll also add that I've been going up and down the district to these in-person town halls that Gabe Evans refuses to go to because he's scared of his own constituents. And when people come up to me, they tell me that they feel like they've been lied to. They said that Donald Trump and Gabe Evans were going to go after grocery costs, and instead they're starting trade wars and putting these corrupt tariffs that are causing our grocery prices to go
All right,
up.
we need to wrap up this answer.
All right, thank you.
I'll leave
Staying
that.
with you, Representative Rutinel, and on the affordability topic, you mentioned H.R. 1, the one.
In 2026, they're paying $2,000 a month. Can you imagine finding an additional $1,500 a month when you can barely make ends meet as it is? This moment requires fighters who understand what's at stake, and for me, this is deeply personal.
Not sure I heard an answer in there. Yes or no to extending specifically those tax breaks on overtime and tips?
We should extend all tax breaks to working families.
All right, Representative Byrd.
Thank you, absolutely. And in fact, we had this vote come before us in the Colorado General Assembly just last year. And I was the only person on this stage to vote against balancing Colorado's budget by taxing overtime pay. So I fully believe that that needs to be extended at a federal level, and I plan to do exactly that, including extending the tax break on tips. I know from personal experience how important those tips were. My grandmother actually shared her tip money with us, and that's how we were able to pay our bills. So I know how important this is to working families. Something else that needs to happen in addition, though, to just extending them, we need to make sure that that the break covers more employees. This is the defect with what the Trump administration passed. Overtime exemptions don't exist and are not in place for all employees under enough circumstances. So we need to make those expansions so that those breaks are fair and make them permanent.
All right. Representative Byrd, sticking with you and moving on to a healthcare question. Both of you have said that you want a public health insurance option, not Medicare for all. How would that work, and who would pay for it?
Sure. Beginning with this, every one of us deserves access to affordable health care. It's not a question, and we need to never be afraid of being one illness away from bankruptcy. This is a problem that has only gotten worse under the Trump administration, as he has done everything he can, along with Gabe Evans, to rip away health care and cause our costs to increase. A very strong opportunity that we will have in the next Congress is to create a public option, and that could be a government-run alternative as a source of insurance, or it could be operated by a not-for-profit. And that opportunity would create lower cost option for people who would prefer that and maybe can't afford a private option, but the existence of the public option in the marketplace will help drive down costs for the rest of us who are purchasing private health insurance. So it benefits the entire market.
All right. I might have missed it, but how do you pay for it? I guess is the big question.
I believe that we need to make our tax code fairer, and through H.R. 1, Gabe Evans and Donald Trump wound up slashing so many things, investments in so many different core programs for us, all to offer tax breaks to his billionaire buddies. Those tax breaks need to be ended so that we can reinvest in programs that benefit all of us.
All right, thank you. Representative Rutinel.
We need a public option, and we need the wealthy to pay for what they're taking from working families right now. Like I said, a family of four just went from $500 a month to $2,000 a month. $500 a month was already too expensive for so many families. And by the way, that $2,000 a month cost means that folks are going to get off of their health insurance, they won't go to the doctor, and they'll wait until they have to go to an emergency room, which means that those costs will get passed down to all of us. So it raises costs on all of us. This isn't just about the lowest income Americans. This is about raising costs on all of us. We need universal health care that prioritizes affordability and accessibility for all Americans. And I think if we had a fair tax code that caused the wealthy to pay their fair share, we can afford these things.
Representative Rittenell, in 30 seconds, what level earner do you think should be taxed higher?
I think folks making over $400,000 are able to pay greater taxes.
And Representative Byrd, you mentioned the idea that using the money that was saved from the tax breaks, but that money came mostly out of Medicaid. So how would you balance those two needs?
I believe we need a tax code that is fair to the American working people. And that means increasing taxes on high earners. I think that's important work to figure out how we tax our assets as well as income. And that's important work of legislation.
Do you have an income level where you think the taxes should be increased?
I would hesitate to offer that right now. I think it's important work that we need to do, and probably similar to what Representative Rittenell has mentioned, $400,000 or $500,000 a year.
Next question goes to Representative Rittenell first. Americans pay far more for the same drugs as people in other countries. What would you do in Congress to reduce drug prices?
I think we need to do what Colorado has done across this country by capping essential medicines like insulin so that nobody should have to decide between important medical procedures or being able to put food on the table or a roof over your child's head. I think also we should leverage Medicare's power to be able to negotiate prices on drugs, which will mean that not only do folks pay less in drug prices, but that'll save taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars every year that is otherwise going to profits for big pharma. Those are some of the things that I think we need to be doing for our drug costs.
Representative Byrd.
No doubt, drug costs are too high, and that's one of the key reasons that so many of us can't afford our health insurance. This issue also is personal for me. I've been uninsured, and I know what it feels like. This is really frightening, and we have got to bring down the price of drugs for all of us, and I know it's hitting our seniors particularly hard. One thing that we can do that I plan to get to work on when I'm in Congress is increasing the government's negotiating power to negotiate the prices of even more medications to help bring those costs down. Something else we need to do is increase our investment in science and innovation so that we are developing more drugs. We should also be decreasing the amount of time that medications are covered by patents, because the longer that a drug has patent protection, that means that's more time that the rest of us have to wait for a generic option that tends to be more affordable. So that's where I would start.
Next question is for you, Representative Byrd, and this is a question from one of our readers. How will you protect American jobs against the proliferation of artificial intelligence?
This is a critical question. Everywhere I go, people are concerned. And I will say that artificial intelligence has the power to do incredible things for us in this country. If used correctly, it can help us increase important efficiencies. Again, used correctly, it can help us solve diseases. To discover solutions that have long eluded scientists, we can speed up that process with artificial intelligence. That innovation needs to happen here in America. That way, as Americans, we can be good stewards of that technology and be the hub and the front runner of innovation. Guardrails need to happen, though, making sure we are protecting our kids. And when they are using AI, we have to make sure that there's no harm coming to our children. We also need to make sure that we are protecting people's jobs, continuously investing in upskilling and training so that people have relevant skills for the workforce. And then in addition to that, making sure that as AI grows in the workforce, it's supplementing and improving our ability to be productive, and not taking our jobs away.
Representative Rittenell.
This may be one of the defining issues of our time. I was the proud lead sponsor of a bill in Colorado a couple years ago to regulate artificial intelligence to protect Colorado's consumers and workers from really terrible practices. And it was a bipartisan bill, and there was only a handful of Democrats who voted against it. Unfortunately, I was disappointed when Shannon Byrd voted against this bipartisan bill to protect Colorado's consumers and workers. This is a priority for so many labor unions. What we need to do is to make sure that artificial intelligence, we're able to reap the benefits and the rewards without the potential terrible side effects that can come to our safety, to our children's safety, to our economy, to our inequality, both on income and in wealth. We need folks who have leadership in this space. That's something that I have done in the legislature. We need folks who understand what's at stake when an AI system discriminates against you because of your name or because of your gender. That's what's at stake right now. And we need real leadership. I'll just say one more thing, that I think that large corporations right now may be engaging in mass layoffs to replace their employees with artificial intelligence. And I think we need to look into the tax breaks that we're giving these large corporations who are doing that.
Representative Byrd, you can have 30 seconds to respond.
Yes, I want everyone here listening to know I agree with the objectives of the bill that Representative Rutenell is talking about, but that bill required so much additional work. It was so problematic that the entire legislature was called back into special session for a week to try to figure it out. There was so much work that still needed to be done. And I think it was only this last legislative session that work continued and finally a compromise was had to resolve all of the unfinished work when the bill was first passed. And that is the only reason I didn't support Representative Rutenell's bill. We have to have laws that actually work.
Representative Rutenell, I want to give you 30 seconds to respond to that. You were a main sponsor of the bill in 2024.
Yes. I, alongside both Democrats and Republicans, voted for a bill to protect Colorado's consumers and workers because we understand that artificial intelligence has both benefits and drawbacks. And we think it's important to set a good floor for businesses to all abide by, which is good for our business environment. And of course, this is an evolving technology. We will come back to the table every single year to regulate it, just like we do in so many other spaces. But we need real leadership that's willing to be out front on this issue.
Thank you. Representative Rutenell, I'll ask another follow-up on the AI bill. Given that it had to be changed and there was so much pushback from the governor and the business industry, was it a mistake to bring it at that time? Why wasn't it ironed out when it was first introduced?
Like I said, this was a bill that passed with bipartisan support. We had a lot of stakeholding that happened, but because this is an evolving technology and things will change, we will come back to the table. I was a proud co-sponsor of the revisions that we made to be able to bring all sorts of folks together on the consumer and on the business side, but we need to protect Colorado's consumers and workers as this technology gets deployed.
And Representative Byrd, that new version of the bill keeps in place notifications when AI is being used, but it took out the requirements that AI companies disclose how their technology works. Do you think that was a mistake?
It's difficult for me to speak in hypotheticals because I wasn't there and not part of the negotiation, but I'm glad that there was a compromise that was found.
All right. This is primarily a state issue. I can't remember whose question this one goes to. All right, Representative Byrd. This is primarily a state issue, but there is a federal overlap. Representative Byrd, should Suncor be allowed to continue operating in Commerce City, or should state pollution officials and maybe federal officials make a concerted effort to end operations at the state's only refinery?
The residents living near and around Suncor have legitimate concerns about air quality. And this is why, as a member of the state legislature, I worked hard to create strict air quality control standards and to fund monitoring, fence line monitoring and community monitoring, so that people could always be aware of what's happening with Suncor, and making sure, something else a priority for me was making sure that our own Environmental Protection Agency had the funding to be able to hold Suncor's operation to a high standard. We need a federal government and a federal EPA that has Colorado's back on this issue, and that's something that we are seeing with Gabe Evans not being supportive at all of holding Suncor accountable, and we need that. We need legislators, Congress members who will fight for those residents and hold Suncor to a high standard of operation.
So it sounds like, yes, it should be allowed to continue operating, but with tighter regulations?
Yes, Suncor provides a core service and develops crucial products, most of the jet fuel used for the Denver International Airport. So that's really important, and we have got to protect people's health who live nearby.
All right, thank you. Representative Rutenell.
So I represent the good people of Commerce City in the State House, and so I see Suncor not that far from so many of my neighbors. And it's an issue that we need to take very seriously. I've been a proud lead sponsor of some of the strongest environmental justice regulations in the country right here in Colorado. I think we need to make sure that we hold polluters accountable when they cause needless nosebleeds, asthma attacks, and cancer risks to our constituents. And I'm also the son of a single mom, and I understand how important jobs and affordability is. And so I believe in an all of the above energy system that provides reliable, affordable, safe energy for all of our constituencies. What we need to be focusing on when it comes to costs and affordability, reliability of our energy system, though, is this forever war that Donald Trump has waged with Iran. We need to bring the War Powers Resolution to bring a stop to this forever war, bring down costs, make sure that we have safe, reliable energy at home.
Same follow-up question to you. It sounds like, yes, it should be allowed to continue operating, but with tighter regulations. Do I have that right?
We need greater accountability against all corporate polluters.
Okay. All right. At this point in the debate, we'd like to invite our friends at Noticias Univision Colorado to ask a few questions. These questions will be asked in English, and we ask that the candidates respond to them in English. Rafael, I will hand it to you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Rafael Contreras with Univision Colorado. It is very important that we're having this conversation. Let's move along, and we'll do it with immigration. Both of you have said that U.S. immigration and customs enforcement should not be abolished, but you've said that it should be changed. If you could remake the agency, how specifically would you do that? And we'll start with Representative Byrd.
Excellent. Thank you. What we are seeing with Donald Trump's immigration enforcement policy is dangerous and un-American. Both he and Gabe Evans promised us that immigration enforcement would be prioritizing and going after people who were here to hurt us, and we have seen anything but. ICE needs to be completely overhauled and led by actual people with knowledge of what law enforcement is. But what that overhaul begins with is banning face masks. No member of law enforcement should be able to go unidentified into any community. We need to mandate body cameras that produce reviewable footage by citizens, so we can hold ICE accountable. And it means on a national level that we are banning ICE activity from our public schools, hospitals, courthouses, and places of worship. And it means that when ICE agents break the law, we are holding them completely accountable. It also means ending warrantless searches. We have got to stop this, and this is work that I am excited to get started on as this district's next member of Congress.
Thank you. Representative Rubino.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for being here. I really appreciate it, especially because this district is 40% Latino. It's the most Latino district in the entire state, one of the most Latino in the entire country. As y'all can imagine, this issue is deeply personal for me as the son of an immigrant single mom with an accent and a darker skin complexion. To know that there are ICE agents right now that are patrolling our streets to terrorize communities like mine, stop people like my mom because of her skin tone and her accent, it infuriates me. And in the Colorado legislature, when Donald Trump unleashed ICE, Democrats came together to stop ICE from raiding our schools and hospitals, and I can't tell you how disappointed I was when Shannon Byrd was the only Democrat to vote with Republicans to allow police to cooperate with ICE and let ICE raid our schools and hospitals. We need strong leadership that will take on Donald Trump and his masked ICE agents. That means that ICE agents shouldn't be wearing masks. That means that they should be focused on gangsters, not grandmas. That means that they should be using judicial orders and following our Constitution just like any other federal official should. This district understands the struggles of what it means when Donald Trump sends his ICE agents into our communities to terrorize us. And we need real leadership who will stand up to Trump. And that's what I've done, and that's what I'll do.
Representative Byrd, he did name you, so if you'd like to respond, 30 seconds.
Thank you. I want to repeat this one more time. I do not support allowing ICE into public schools or hospitals. Representative Rootnell continues to mischaracterize my vote and tear me down to distract you all from the fact that he has accepted over $100,000 in campaign contributions from employees of an ICE contractor. So you can go look that up yourselves. That is publicly verifiable information.
Representative Bruno, go ahead.
I am the only person on this stage that has never accepted a penny from corporate PACs. Shannon Byrd, during her time in the legislature, was one of the top recipients of corporate PAC donations. And she quit the legislature, which is good news and bad news. Good news is it means she can't keep voting with ICE. Bad news is now she's trying to run for Congress to vote with ICE in Congress.
All right. I'll give you 30 seconds, and if you want 30 more seconds, but then we'll move on.
Indeed, I am accepting no corporate PAC money, and in fact, I was the first candidate in this race to sign a pledge to unrig Washington. Again, another mischaracterization and distraction from the fact that Representative Rootnell has only raised about 10% of his funds for his campaign from people here in Colorado, compared to the over 85% that I have raised from people here in Colorado. And my campaign is supported by individuals, labor unions, and progressive organizations who support electing Democrats, and I'm very proud to have had the support I've had.
All right, 30 seconds, and then we're going to move on.
Our campaign is funded by over 65,000 individual donors who have donated an average of $27 into our campaign without a single penny from corporate PACs. I encourage Shannon Byrd to return all of the money that she's gotten over her career from corporate PACs, and I encourage all of us to take on the dark money groups that are trying to buy our elections and billionaires that are trying to divide and conquer us by enabling folks like Shannon Byrd to vote with ICE agents and in favor of large corporations against working people.
Thank you.
We have other important questions. Earlier this month, a federal judge ruled that ICE officers in Colorado are still making unlawful warrantless arrests. As a member of Congress, how exactly will you use your oversight power and bully pulpit to force accountability? And we'll start with Representative Rootnell.
When I get to Congress, I want to be part of the Oversight Committee so that I can subpoena and hold the feet to the fire of every single Trump enabler in his administration. And I also want to do that against any single leader in that administration that is raiding our schools and hospitals and engaging in unconstitutional behavior, because we need real leadership in Congress on this issue. These ICE agents are terrorizing our communities. They're doing so by targeting people because of their skin tone, because of their accents, targeting people like my mom. Every single time I think about that ICE vote, when Shannon Byrd sided with Republicans, it breaks my heart. And I know that so many of my colleagues, the Democrats that stood up to Donald Trump, were just incredibly disappointed. We need folks who will stand up to Trump and have the toughness to do so.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you. Continuing to say the same things doesn't make it true. And I encourage you all to go and look for yourself and see who is funding Representative Rootnell's campaign. And you will understand the distraction that is being thrown your way tonight.
Can you answer that question, though, as a member of Congress? How would you use your oversight power on ICE?
Absolutely. We need to pass federal legislation that stops and ends warrantless arrests. That is the important thing to have happen first as a matter of first recourse. Beyond that, we also have an important tool open to us, and as the former chair of our state's budget committee, this is a power I exercise frequently to make sure that the laws we passed and even our executive and our agencies were held accountable for serving the good people here in Colorado. You hold up funding for things when agencies aren't behaving well, when they're not delivering, when they're not respecting the people's rights. And that is what I intend to do in Congress. I am about making things effective, using all of the tools at my disposal. It is why I was named the #1 most effective lawmaker in the state of Colorado. I will use all of those skills at my disposal. And in addition to that, absolutely using committee oversight responsibility to draw attention so that the public knows when agencies aren't following the will of Congress.
A yes or no question for both of you. We'll start with you, Representative Byrd. Do you agree with the decision by, Senate Democrats to not fund Department of Homeland Security over concerns about ICE?
Yes.
And
Yes.
Representative Rootnell?
Yes.
Beyond ICE, what should happen to millions of immigrants who are already living in the United States without the proper authorization? And we'll start this time with Representative Byrd.
We need immigration reform. That has to happen. And the first thing that needs to happen is passing the DREAM Act. We need to protect DACA recipients in this country. We also need to create a path to citizenship for people who have come to our country, who want to work, be reunited with their families, be part of our communities. They need that opportunity to do so. And we also need to reform our system of asylum so that people are not waiting for years and years for an immigration determination hearing. We need to fund more judges so that those hearings can happen and that people are given the opportunity for a fair, fast, and final determination.
Representative Rutino.
We need comprehensive immigration reform, and that starts by making sure that DACA recipients have a pathway to citizenship, that dreamers have an ability to continue contributing to our country the ways that they have for so long. This is an issue that is deeply in the bones of this district. It's a 40% Latino district that has so many immigrants coming in from all parts of the world looking for that American dream. And everywhere they go now, they have to face these masked ICE agents that are looking to terrorize their communities, rip families apart. That's not what so many folks across this country actually wanted. When I go to these in-person town halls, people tell me how much they feel like they've been lied to. That Donald Trump said that he was going to go after the hardened criminals, and instead he is ripping families apart. Now folks look in their neighborhoods, and so many homes are empty. Homes that were full of families that were just trying to work hard and provide for their families, provide for their communities. I'm honored to be endorsed by so many groups that represent so many immigrants, like the United Farm Workers, folks who are just trying to work hard, but everywhere they go, they're being met by masked ICE agents terrorizing their communities.
A quick follow-up regarding DACA. Should DACA recipients get a pathway to citizenship immediately, and how would you work with your colleagues in Congress? We've seen this for so many years, and this community feels that they have not gotten an answer. Representative Rubino.
Yeah, absolutely. DACA recipients are our friends and family members, our neighbors. They're folks who came here, they were brought here, and they want to work hard. They want to provide for their communities. They deserve an opportunity to live out that American dream as citizens. I'll do what I did for years now in the Colorado legislature when I've co-sponsored over 400 laws, many of which have been to work across the aisle, from folks across the political spectrum. There's an opportunity here for us to be able to find common ground, and unfortunately, it means that we're going to have to win back this seat and win back Congress so that we can have that additional leverage to be able to pass these types of important policies, especially given that Donald Trump has been such an obstacle to immigration reform everywhere we look. So that's where I'll start.
Representative Byrd.
Absolutely, we need reform. And what that starts with is finding that willing coalition. This is something that is one of the best parts of lawmaking, is going and finding those people who will be fellow problem solvers with you. It's something I have done as a state legislator time and time again. It's how I was able to champion a years-long effort in reform how we start building condominiums in our state again, one of the biggest problems that has impacted our state and impacted affordable housing. But at a federal level, there are representatives across the country on both sides of the aisle who share this concern. We have seen bipartisan efforts at a federal level to come together and try to solve the immigration challenges that our state or country actually have had. Those people need to be brought back together. It's a coalition of the willing. Find necessary compromise and make this a priority. This is something, it's an issue that deserves more than lip service, which is what our current government has been doing for too long. We need doers, we need fighters, we need people who know how to get things done. I will underscore this is exactly in my wheelhouse. It's why I was named the #1 most effective lawmaker in this state. I'm going to take that skill set with me, go find that coalition of the willing, and fight for the immigrants in this community.
All right, thank you so much, Representative Byrd, and thank you, Rafael, and our friends at Noticias Univision Colorado.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are at the point of the debate where we've got an individual question for each of you. Sticking with the order that we're in, Representative Byrd, you'll get the first question here. Representative Byrd, you've criticized Representative Rutinel for voting yes on the state budget this year because it cut Medicaid to balance a roughly $1.5 billion shortfall, in no small part caused by decisions made by the legislature in years past, including while you were there and serving on the Joint Budget Committee. So my question for you is, what would you have cut instead to balance the budget?
I absolutely would have not voted to cut Medicaid. I want to be very clear about that. And there is nobody on this stage who understands more about Colorado's budget than I do as former chair of our state's budget committee and a member in a leadership role in that committee for the last 3 years. At the very least, what I would have done is tapped our state's rainy day fund. That is a fund that is currently sitting at over $2 billion right now. Using funds in the rainy day fund, and honestly, if this isn't a rainy day, I don't know what is. I would have used those dollars to give our state at least one more year to figure this out. And in fact, voters are going to have that opportunity at the ballot box this next year. We have the opportunity to vote and change the way we collect tax revenue in this state and give us an opportunity to fund Medicaid. For anybody who has spent any time in this district, we know that over half of the kids in Colorado's 8th depend upon Medicaid to go and see the doctor. These aren't theoretical cuts. They're not theoretical impacts. They deserve better. They deserve a problem solver and a fighter. I would have not voted to cut Medicaid, and I would have found another way to fund their services.
Representative Byrd, a follow-up question. The JBC decided to, we can get into some budget specifics here, but the JBC did vote to reduce the state's reserve to 13% from 15%. They made the decision not to reduce it further because they felt it was incredibly dangerous given the economic conditions. So you wouldn't have been worried about taking all of the money that would have been needed out of the reserve, and what would that have left the state in terms of, you know, if there is an economic downturn?
I wasn't there, so it's difficult to deal with hypotheticals, but what I can say is that we didn't need to wipe out the entire reserve for this. At the very least, we could have tapped additional funds from that reserve to have head off the very worst of these cuts for just one more year and give voters at the ballot box the opportunity to figure this out.
All right. Representative Rutinel, she did mention you, so I'll give you 30 seconds before we ask your question.
There's a reason Shannon Byrd wasn't there, and that's because she quit the legislature when her constituents needed her the most so that she can pursue a personal ambition and take as much money as she could from her lobbyist donors. We need leadership right now that understand what's at stake and is willing to fight back against the Trump administration, especially during these moments when our constituents need us most.
Yeah, we'll give you 30 seconds.
Great. I resigned because I know that being an effective state representative requires 150% of your effort. Running for Congress in the nation's most competitive congressional seat also requires 150% of my time and attention. I resigned because I didn't think it was fair to accept a taxpayer-funded salary and benefits while my attention was focused on making sure this district earns a representative that will work hard for you and answer to you and not the president.
Okay, we're going to move on. Representative Rutinel, this question is for you. Colorado's 8th district is arguably Colorado's agricultural capital, with a very strong ranching and beef packing presence. You've previously said, quote, animal agriculture is a horrific exploitative industry, and that, quote, the globe must dramatically shift away from animal products and towards fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, and nuts. How can these industries trust that you won't try to eliminate them?
Colorado's ranchers and farmers are my friends. They are the envy of the world, and they have the most sustainable and best practices and the best products across this world. What is the real threat to current agriculture is Donald Trump and Gabe Evans' tariff policies that is kicking the teeth of ranchers and farmers across this district. And I just want to say another thing on the points before about staying in the legislature or not. This is the most competitive race in the country, and it's the sort of seat that not only do we need to win, but we need to keep. Is the idea then that we should win this seat and then drop out to campaign again? We need someone who is able to legislate and campaign at the same time. I'll also add that I am proud to be endorsed by the United Farm Workers and the United Food and Commercial Workers who represent JBS workers. They understand that I will always fight for them, just like I did during their most recent union victory, and that's what I will do when I'm in Congress.
More to the question, how can these industries trust that you won't try and eliminate them, based on your previous comments?
Like I said, I think that Colorado ranchers and farmers are the envy of the world, and we need to be supporting them every step of the way. And that includes by making sure that we have SNAP dollars in our farm bill. That means removing these corrupt tariff policies that are kicking the teeth of our ranchers and farmers across this district. That's the kind of leadership we need in Congress.
We're going to move on to a series of yes or no questions for both of you. So please only answer yes or no. You'll have a minute at the end of this round to expand on any answer if you'd like. So we'll start with Representative Routenell. Should Congress consider increasing the age at which people can begin collecting Social Security, which is currently 62?
No.
Representative Byrd.
No.
And for you, Representative Byrd, should there be work requirements for Medicaid recipients?
No.
Representative Routenell.
No.
Representative Routenell, would you support a national limit on gun magazine size, like Colorado's 15-round limit?
Yes.
Representative Byrd.
Yes.
Representative Byrd, should there be a federal ban on the sale of so-called assault weapons?
If it's enforceable and constitutional, yes.
Representative Routenell.
Yes.
Representative Routenell, do you support increasing the federal minimum wage?
Absolutely.
Representative Byrd.
Yes.
Representative Byrd, if there is a measure on the November ballot, you alluded to this earlier, imposing a graduated income tax rate in Colorado, would you vote yes on it?
Yes.
Representative Routenell.
Yes.
Representative Routenell, would you support a federal ban on hydraulic fracturing, also known as fracking?
I believe in all of the above energy solution.
Is that a yes or no?
I think that we need to be able to have an all of the above energy solution.
So you wouldn't support a ban on fracking?
I would not.
Representative Byrd?
No.
Representative Byrd, would you support a federal moratorium on new oil and gas leases on federal land?
Yes.
Representative Routenell.
Yes.
Representative Routenell, should members of Congress be banned from lobbying for life?
Yes.
Representative Byrd.
Yes.
And these aren't yes or no's, but hopefully single word answers. Representative Byrd, name 2 committees you'd like to serve on if elected to the House.
Energy and Commerce and Finance.
Representative Routenell.
Oversight and Energy and Commerce.
And Representative Routenell, name the member of Congress you most respect.
I'm honored to be endorsed by former U.S. Senator Ken Salazar.
Representative Byrd.
Nancy Pelosi.
All right. See, we can agree on a few things. That's good. We are now at the point of the debate where we're going to let the candidates ask each other a question. And each candidate will have 30 seconds to ask their question, and a minute. The other candidate will have a minute and a half to respond. Representative Byrd, you're up first.
Great. Representative Routenell, I see your television commercials on air telling people that you fought to save and protect Medicaid, but your vote is otherwise. And I'm wondering if you can explain to us how voting to cut Medicaid is actually saving it for people and fighting for it.
The issue of Medicaid is unbelievably personal for me. I grew up on Medicaid since I was 10 years old. Donald Trump cut Medicaid. Gabe Evans cut Medicaid. I worked with my Democratic colleagues to save Medicaid. The only reason why you weren't involved in that vote was because you quit the legislature to be able to focus on your personal ambitions. This is the moment that we need real leadership in Congress to fight back against Donald Trump and Gabe Evans's cut to our most important programs, and I will fight with everything I've got to do that. Yeah,
you can have 30 seconds.
Again, I've already answered why I resigned from the legislature. I don't think it's right to take a taxpayer-funded salary and benefits when you're spending the majority of your time running for Congress. The candidate here, the people here deserve somebody who's going to fight for you. And again, bringing this up one more time is, I want you to see it for what it is. It's Manny Rutinel trying to distract from a record that he can't defend himself.
I'll give you 30 seconds, Mr. Rutinel.
We voted to save Medicaid when Donald Trump and Gabe Evans cut it. We had a budget shortfall. We made important decisions to be able to save Medicaid for our constituencies. This is a moment where we need fighters, and we need fighters at the federal level to undo the harms that Donald Trump and Gabe Evans have done to our communities.
Representative Rutinel, you can now ask your question of Representative Byrd.
Representative Byrd, this district was drawn in large part for Latino representation. Colorado, as a state, is 25% Latino. This district is 40% Latino. Why do you not want Latino representation in Colorado's Congress?
I want everyone to know that in this district, this is a place where my husband and I have raised our children. I've lived in what is now Colorado's 8th for nearly 25 years. I was a long-time, years-long community volunteer well before I ever considered running for office. I know this community and I know this district so well. We need representation who knows the community. And during my campaign, I understand and recognize how crucial the Latino community is in Colorado's 8th. It's why I've prioritized community outreach to the Latino community, engaging with their small businesses, going to community events that I know are so important to Latinos in this district, and actually visiting many corners of Colorado's 8th district. It's crucial that we know the people we want to represent. I'm doing that work so that I can be ready on day one to be a representative who fights for you and is ready to go on day one.
Okay, we have some questions back to both of you. Representative Rutinel, we'll start with you. Should Congress have more oversight into how military aid is given to Israel, into how military aid given to Israel is used, as well as American weapons that are sold to Israel?
I have friends in the region that tell me about how much fear and terror they live in every single day. On the issues of Israel and Palestine, I think we need to have real leadership to bring folks together to the table to negotiate peace and long-lasting stability for all the people in this region. When it comes to the issue of funding, I think we need to look to the Obama administration's 2016 Memorandum of Understanding to understand how we should be dealing with the issues of funding for Israel.
So do you think Congress should have more oversight into how military aid to Israel is used?
I think that Congress should have the same oversight over all nations and all of our funding. That should be universal for all sorts of funding. It should be the same standard for everyone.
No specifics for Israel.
I think that the oversight that we have should be universal for all sorts of aid.
Representative Byrd?
To be clear, every country, every foreign country that receives aid from the United States of America, that aid comes with conditions and strings. I also support the Obama administration's 2016 Memorandum of Understanding and holding all foreign countries who accept American foreign aid to a high standard for following those conditions and complying with American law.
Yes or no question to either of you. Do you feel that Israel is currently abiding by the 2016 memorandum? Representative Byrd?
I am not there, and I assume our Congress is holding all countries to the same standard.
Representative Rutinel?
I would like to be in Congress to be able to understand the details.
Representative Byrd, questions for you. Colorado is not on track to meet its emissions reductions goals, and transportation is largely to blame. What policies would you pursue to reduce transportation emissions faster?
One of the biggest issues I hear about, and particularly in suburban areas of the Denver metro area and outlying areas, is the lack of mass transit. This is something that our state has struggled with for so many years. We've tried RTD, and with varying success, RTD has helped meet some of these needs, but we need massive investment in transit infrastructure in this country, and particularly in Colorado. Not only will that help us get more cars off of roads, but it will help us clear up our air and allow us to meet those clean air standards.
How would you pay for the kind of investments in mass transit you're talking about?
I want to continue working on our tax code to make sure we are taxing people fairly and that billionaires are paying their fair share.
Representative Brutinel, same question for you.
In the Colorado legislature, I have co-sponsored many laws to be able to deal with our transportation issues and our emissions. One law that I've co-sponsored was to make sure that we have affordable housing units that get built alongside transit corridors so that folks are able to afford their home and also be able to access public transportation. That's the sort of policy that I think we need to be pushing at the federal level with much greater resources. I'll also say that Donald Trump and Gabe Evans have gutted our renewable energy tax credits, and that means that so much of our electric vehicles now won't be able to benefit from those low emission tax credits that Donald Trump and Gabe Evans have cut.
All right, Representative Brutinel, staying on this topic, you both have mentioned renewable energy, but oil and gas is a major industry in the 8th District, employing thousands of people and powering the local economy here. How would you balance the need for that clean energy transition that you've talked about with protecting those oil and gas jobs and that tax base?
We need to make sure that we have affordable, abundant, safe energy, and I think that means an all of the above energy system. I think the biggest issue right now when it comes to our energy system is this forever war that Donald Trump has decided to start and put American lives at risk in the process that is causing our gas prices and all of our prices to go up dramatically. I think that to be able to have a stable economy, we need to have an all-the-above energy system, and we need to make sure that we're holding corporate polluters accountable along the way.
Representative Byrd.
Weld County is home to some of the greatest amounts of energy production in our state, both oil and gas development and renewables, as a matter of fact. This is an issue that was one of the first pieces of legislation that I worked on and co-sponsored as a member of the state legislature. One of the first actions we took was passage of Senate Bill 181, which gave local communities more control over where oil and gas development could occur, which was a huge shift in how Colorado navigates making sure we're able to produce energy, which is necessary to keep the cost of energy low for us, making sure that local communities could have a say and that there wouldn't be industrial activity right near people's hospitals or their backyards. And Colorado really does have a gold standard. Not only did we increase local control over the siting of this industrial activity, but we also have high standards for clean air, monitoring of emissions, and strict reporting anytime there are spills. And we need a congresswoman in DC fighting for this district to make sure that the EPA has Colorado's back as we hold all oil and gas and all energy producers accountable for protecting the environment and making sure they're able to produce the energy that we all depend upon and need to be able to afford, candidly.
30-second follow-up for each of you. We'll start with Representative Brutinel. I heard a lot about the need to have an all-the-above energy future, but not necessarily answers for the oil and gas workers who live in this district and how you would support them. I mean, is it just maintaining their jobs? Is it shrinking the industry? What would you tell an oil and gas worker who's staring down not having a job?
I think oil and gas workers deserve the right to be able to unionize. They deserve the right to be able to access programs like Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act credits. Those are programs that would directly benefit them. And of course, if we hold corporate polluters accountable and put in reasonable safeguards so that we can protect our communities, our workers will also be able to benefit from that.
Representative Byrd.
I think we do that by making sure we're holding all producers of energy accountable. We need, I agree we need an all-of-the-above energy strategy, and oil and gas is part of that. We all need to be able to afford our utility bills. That's core. I met with a voter recently she was a single woman, lived on Social Security, and her biggest concern actually was her utility bill. For every dollar that her utility bill went up, that was a copay she wasn't able to afford or groceries she couldn't buy. So this is, again, another not theoretical issue. We need an all-of-the-above strategy, and we can achieve protecting jobs and the environment by making sure we are holding all producers accountable and to high standards.
Thank you. We are on a college campus, so a higher education question is definitely in line. Tuition costs have far outpaced inflation, and student loan debt is crushing many borrowers. How would you make higher education more affordable and accessible, and does Congress have a role to play in reducing the student loan debt that's existing, that's out there right now? Representative Byrd.
Well, this is something that I actually worked on as a member of the state legislature. Being the first person in my family to be able to go to college, that's a reality that more people need to have, not just me, because higher education is life-changing. This is why I championed and prime-sponsored the legislation to make higher education and trade school and community college free for students coming from families making $90,000 or less. That would be something that we could replicate on a federal level. We also need to increase scholarships and grants and expand the Pell Grant. This is a way that we can support low-income students and give them opportunities to obtain higher education.
Thank you. Representative Rudna.
College is unbelievably unaffordable right now. I won't do a call and response to ask y'all how much y'all think I have in student loan debt, but I assure you it is a lot. When I first went to college, my first semester, I spent it sleeping on my friends' floors and couches. That's the reality for so many college students across this state and across this country. I relied on Pell Grants to be able to make ends meet. I spent hours and hours and hours at a plasma center selling my blood to be able to pay for my tuition. That's what we're talking about here. We need to make sure that we strengthen Pell Grants. We need to make sure that community college is free across the nation. And we need to make sure that the folks who are doing great public service work have an opportunity to forgive their loans after they dedicate service to our nation and to our localities.
Representative Rutnell, this question's for you first. Parents in Colorado of all income levels are struggling to find and afford childcare, especially for their infants. What would you do to fix this problem in Congress?
Childcare is another thing. I don't have to tell y'all, but so many of you probably can't afford childcare and have decided to delay having children, or you're asking your child to have children and they're telling you it's too expensive. This is an issue that is a huge priority for so many families across this district. I think that if you're under a certain threshold, you shouldn't have to worry about being able to afford childcare, because if we allow those folks to afford childcare, they can go off into the workforce and contribute to our communities in a different way. I think that we need to make sure that folks under certain income thresholds are able to afford childcare, and I think we do that by funding it, by taxing the wealthiest people on this planet and our large corporations.
What income threshold are you thinking of?
I think that the certain levels above the poverty line, I think, are appropriate for universal child care.
And Representative Byrd.
Child care for too many families is about the same as a college education, and that's unsustainable. Many people are making the choice to stay out of the workforce or finding less than ideal situations for their kids when they have to work. And that also is unsustainable. What needs to happen at a federal level is that we need to increase federal subsidies for child care to bring that cost down. We also need to increase funding for programs like Head Start and other after-school programs like Boys and Girls Clubs, so that our school-age children have a place to go and be safe after school. Something else that I've actually championed in the state legislature and co-sponsored is funding to educate more child care providers, more early childhood educators. We don't have enough people in the pipeline able to do this, and when you don't have enough people to provide a particular service, the cost goes up. So we need to be training more individuals who can offer this service and bring that cost down for more families.
You both mentioned bringing costs down for families. How would you pay for increased subsidies, Representative Rudno?
We need to tax the rich and the wealthiest corporations on this planet.
And Representative Byrd?
I agree. We need a fair tax code where corporations and the wealthiest among us are paying their fair share.
A follow-up to that, I think you've mentioned 3 or 4 programs now where you want to fund them by taxing the wealthy and big corporations. Is there enough money out there to pay for all these things? Representative Rudno?
We live in the wealthiest nation in the world. It shouldn't be the case that families have to decide between putting food on the table, a roof over their child's head, or paying for important medical procedures. We can afford so many programs, and don't let the billionaires tell you otherwise.
Well, again, I've mentioned changing our tax code, but something else we can do is save money by ending the war in Iran. Right now, we are shelling out about $1 billion a day to fight an unauthorized war started by Donald Trump. So that might be a good source of funds as well.
All right, staying with you, Representative Byrd. Both of you have said that you support campaign finance reform, but we are campaign finance nerds here at the Colorado Sun, and we'd like to hear some specifics. So what specifically would you change about federal campaign finance rules?
Yes, we absolutely need campaign finance reform. I was the first candidate in this race to sign the Unrig Washington Pledge, which begins with overturning Citizens United. Dark money, corporate money rather, that isn't speech, and that's something that needs to be changed. We need to get dark money out of politics, increase transparency so that voters know who's trying to influence your opinion and influence elections. Those are 2 key places. We also need to ban stock trading amongst members of Congress and the president, frankly, and his family. Banning that and making sure that we don't have people making our laws who have intense conflicts of interest and are using insider information. Nobody should be using public service as a way to get wealthy. We should be there to solve problems.
Representative Rudno?
Citizens United was one of the worst Supreme Court decisions in American history. It has allowed billionaires and corporations to influence our elections and lie to us. We need to overturn Citizens United. We also need to see the role of corporate PACs in our election system. I am the only person on this stage that has never accepted a penny from corporate PACs. Unfortunately, Shannon Byrd was one of the top recipients of corporate PAC donations during her time in the legislature. We need to root out corruption and any semblances of it out of our politics, and it starts with election reform.
Would you care to respond?
I will just say that I have pledged to accept no corporate PAC money, and I haven't. My campaign, I am proud to say, is funded by Coloradans and by progressive organizations who elect Democrats, like labor unions and Emily's List, and farmers. I am so proud to have their support.
We have a housing question now. We'll start with, I think it was Representative Rudno now? Yes. In recent years, Colorado has tried to increase housing affordability by pushing local governments to zone for more housing. Should the federal government and Congress step in and do something similar to encourage or require zoning reform?
Whenever I go across the district, I hear about housing affordability before I hear about anything else. This affects Democrats, Republicans, swing voters, independents, young people, old people. It is a serious issue. It's something that I've been able to see firsthand. I'm a renter, and my rent has gone up 15% year over the last handful of years. Can you imagine a family of 4 seeing their rents go up 15% year over year? In the legislature, I've been proud to co-sponsor dozens of laws to deal with our housing affordability crisis, including a $50 million revolving fund that provides credits directly to first-time homeowners. That's the kind of leadership we need in Congress. And I also think that on the zoning issue, we need to make sure that we are building affordable housing units, especially near transit corridors. And we can't allow localities to put in red tape for these affordable housing units.
So to confirm, you think the federal government does have a role to step in and require zoning changes?
I think the federal government can provide the incentives to make sure that localities build alongside transit corridors and upzone their localities.
What would that look like?
a series of funds to be able to allow those localities to access those funds when they upzone their localities.
Representative Byrd?
The issue of high rents and actually just high housing costs is one that's deeply personal to me. I grew up my entire childhood in places that we rented. In fact, my mother didn't own our family's first home until I was already off to college. And this is something that too many families continue to struggle with today. And this is actually why, as a member of the state legislature, housing was one of the most important pieces of law that I worked on, because more people need to be able to afford where they live. I championed a years-long effort to expand Colorado's investment in affordable housing. But knowing that that isn't enough, most people don't want to be forever tenants. We also want the opportunity to have the American dream and own our own home. I also championed construction defect reform, which will get our state building more condominiums which are more affordable. A challenge with using the federal government to impose a one-size-fits-all plan and idea, that takes away people's voices in their local communities. But there are so many other ways that our federal government can help bring down housing costs. One of that is cleaning up bureaucratic red tape. Those drive costs. Bureaucratic red tape makes it so expensive for developers to build, and that cost gets passed on to homeowners. We also need to rein in private equity. Many private equity firms are scooping up single-family homes that are about to go into foreclosure, and they take those homes off the market where normal families like the rest of us don't ever have the opportunity to purchase those homes.
Thank you,
That
Representative
needs to
Byrd.
stop.
And just to confirm, so you don't think the federal government has a role to step in and change zoning rules?
I don't believe a one-size-fits-all is a good idea, and I don't think it's good to take away people's voices when they talk about what they want their communities to look like.
Okay.
All right, staying with you, Representative Byrd. The Artificial Intelligence Data Center Moratorium Act, that is a mouthful, would pause the permitting and construction of new large-scale AI data centers until comprehensive national safeguards are enacted to protect communities, the environment, and utility ratepayers. Would you support that bill in Congress?
I believe that data centers are already amongst us, but when they get built, people need to have an opportunity in all of the communities where they're located. You need to have a say as neighbors and constituents, people who would be impacted by data centers being constructed in your localities. And when this happens, what I want to champion at a federal level is corporate responsibility policy, which means that as a data center is built, that data center is required to build out its own energy infrastructure. And this way we make sure that high users of energy aren't, like data centers, aren't requiring the rest of us to subsidize the cost of their energy. And also in drought-stricken Colorado, when a data center is built, we need to make sure and require them to find their own water so that they are never competing with our very limited water supplies.
I take that as a no on that specific bill.
I'm not sure the details of the bill, and I think it's difficult to answer in hypotheticals.
Should there be a moratorium on new data centers until federal regulations are passed?
It's possible, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Same question to you, Representative Brunel. Do you want me to repeat the question?
I think I get
Okay.
the idea. I also would love to see the details of that bill before I make any commitments on it. But I do think that what we need are strong guardrails in place so that ratepayers are protected when these data centers come in and use up all of our energy. We also need to make sure that water usage isn't an issue, and we can talk about closed loop systems, but we need to make sure that those standards are in place, especially in places like Colorado that is stricken by droughts. I also think that there's an issue here of renewable energy. These data centers should be using renewable energy as much as humanly possible. I've seen a lot of corporate commitments from these corporations go to the wayside as soon as they start making data centers, and I think we need to make sure that we have good guardrails in place for this technology.
And I'll just ask you directly too, should there be a moratorium on new data center construction across the country until there are federal regulations or a federal bill passed regulating them?
I think that localities can decide on many of those things, but I do think that we need strong guardrails for data centers.
Okay, so they should be allowed to be built, and there should not be a federal moratorium.
I would have to look at the details of that policy idea.
Okay. All right, well, we are at the end of our debate here, and so we're at the time for closing statements. Each candidate will have 1 minute, and Representative Routenell, you're up first.
Thank you all so much for being here. I know it's been a long time, but I'm really grateful that y'all are all participating in our democracy. As y'all know, this is a deeply personal fight for me, and I'm so honored to have the support of over 1,000 volunteers that are knocking doors and making phone calls, over 65,000 individual donors that have chipped in an average of $27. The largest unions in the state, including teachers and United Farm Workers, support this campaign because they understand that I will be the fighter that this district so desperately needs. So I'm so grateful in advance for your support come June 30th in this primary.
Thank you. Representative Byrd.
Well, thank you again to every member of the audience who made time to come and hear us tonight. It is very clear that you have a choice in this primary. I have delivered, I have a track record, and I have delivered time and again for Colorado communities. I have fought to make housing affordable, to cut insurance red tape, to expand health care and make sure that you can afford your health care. I have worked to fund Colorado's public schools, and this is why I was named the #1 most effective lawmaker in the state of Colorado. I'm proud to have earned the support of 3 former members of Congress who have represented major portions of what is now Colorado's 8th Congressional District, along with labor unions, our firefighters, farmers, and so many others. Over 200 leaders right here in this district and across the state have endorsed my campaign because they know I'm a fighter who solves problems and delivers. That's what this district deserves. You need a representative who gets things done, who answers to you and not the president. I ask, please visit shannonbyrd.com to learn more about me, and I would be honored to earn your vote and your support.
That's it for our forum tonight. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you to our candidates. Thank you to Univision Colorado, to the Colorado Health Foundation for sponsoring this event, and for the University of Northern Colorado for hosting us. Good night.